Evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our Police Advisory Panel meeting for the month of March and officially call this meeting to order. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes from our February 10th meeting, and if so, I'd like to have a motion for approval of those minutes.
I'd like to move we accept the minutes as written and presented.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from our February 10th meeting. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
I've heard ayes from both Ralph and, I'm sorry, from both Charlie and Ricky on Teams. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Our minutes have been approved. Before we move on, we need to have a motion to amend today's agenda. One of the things that I left off the agenda is we need to select or elect a vice chair for our panel. As most of you know, our former chairman has resigned from the panel to assist the county in other ways. And with me being the co-chair, I have accepted the responsibility of being chair, which left a vacancy for our chair position. So at this time, I ask for a motion to amend our agenda so that we can elect another chair, a vice chair.
Mr. Chair, is it required that we have a deputy? Is it for the panel? Is that?
I don't know if it's required. I know that we generally do. I don't know what the rules indicate, but I think it's a good idea to have one too. Yeah. Chair and vice chair.
Okay.
Okay. So can I get a motion to amend the agenda? We'll start there.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we amend the agenda for today's meeting to add the topic of electing a vice chair. Are there any questions? We'll make it 2.1. Since we're taking it before 3, we'll make it 2.1. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the ayes have it, so we will now move into the period of taking nominations for the vice chair's position. So the floor is now open for nominations.
This is Ricky. I nominate myself for the position.
All right, we have a nomination of Mr. Ricky Walker of himself for the position of vice chair. Any other nominations?
Could I nominate Mr. Basham? No, without having talked to him about it first. Unless it upsets him.
I'm very happy to have Ricky be the. I will decline, and I would support Mr. Walker's self-nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I now close the nominations for vice chair, and we'll move into our process of voting. So since we only have one nominee for the position, I'll ask that all in favor of selecting or electing Mr. Ricky Walker as the vice chair of the Police Advisory Panel do so by voting aye.
So on a, Mr. Chairman, on a procedural matter, so this is a temporary nomination or a permanent nomination. I'm assuming that the former chairman will be returning at some point.
It is my understanding that his resignation was permanent. Am I incorrect in that assumption?
Okay, okay, I wasn't aware of that.
I read the resignation, and I did not see anything that indicated it was temporary.
Okay, okay,
At least in the chair position. Now, he can always be reappointed
okay,
by the commissioners
okay.
to
Just
serve on the panel.
Just a point of clarification.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, at this time,
If
it's
Mr.
my understanding that it will be
Alexander returns,
permanent.
if Mr. Alexander returns, I will gladly step down and we can put things back the way they were.
Okay, Mr. Walker has indicated that if and when Mr. Alexander returns, that he's willing to vacate his position. All right. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of Mr. Walker being our vice chair? Please say aye.
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 All right, Mr. Walker, congratulations. You are now serving as the Police Advisory Panel's vice chair. We'll move on
Thank you,
to...
everyone. I look forward to continue working together.
Absolutely, and we look forward to you working. I have a lot of things that I need to pass on to you, sir. I'm just kidding. We'll be talking
I
soon.
have all the time in the world. I'm retired twice, so I'm good to go.
I'm just kidding. We'll be talking soon, though. We do have some things that we need to talk
Okay.
about.
Okay, roger that.
All right, let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is the recruitment update.
Good afternoon, panel members. Sergeant Scoggin, Administrative Division. Currently, we are allotted 129 sworn positions at the police department. We are currently 24 officers short. That puts us at 105 filled sworn positions right now. Within the last month and a half, we've lost six officers. One was due to retirement. Lieutenant retired. He had been with the department for over 25 years, and so he was ready for retirement. In addition to that, we had one officer that just decided to get out of police work and moved to North Georgia. We had another officer that resigned and took a position with the West Virginia State Police, and that was something that he had kind of always wanted to do, and so, he moved on. And then, of course, as I'm sure you're aware, we lost 3 of our officers to the Sheriff's Department because they all made a substantial raise by moving over there, $10,000 or more apiece in their annual salary. So we lost 6 within the last month and a half, which has really impacted us pretty heavily. Currently, I have 16 certified candidates that are in the process. Out of those, let me back up, I apologize. I have 1 new officer that started last Monday that is on board with us, that's assigned to the admin division, that is processing right now. Hopefully within the next week and a half, he'll be assigned to the patrol division where he'll begin his field training program. Beyond that, I have 17 other officers, certified candidates in the process. One of those packets is already down at Human Resources, just trying to finish up some of his testing so that he can get a start date, so he'll be on board with us. And then out of those remaining 16, I have 6 computer voice stress analysis scheduled between Thursday and Monday out of those candidates. And that's the last process in the hiring process. Everything else is done. Their backgrounds are completed. So we'll do the computer voice stress analysis, truth verification exam. And then as long as they pass that, they'll be presented to the chief and to the 3 captains for approval to move forward. And then those packets will be sent down to Human Resources. So I'm hoping as long as they all do well on their CVSAs, that hopefully next Tuesday or Wednesday I can have a meeting with the chief and the captains, and we can, move forward with those candidates and send their paperwork down to Human Resources. That leaves the remainder of that number that are in various stages. I'm contacting references, waiting on responses, and as soon as I can get all of those responses back and complete the background, I'll schedule the remaining candidates for CVSAs. Right now, looking at my entire list, what I've found in the background checks, it looks like all of them are very, very good candidates. And I don't foresee, anyone, out of that group not progressing through as long as they continue. Now, I do have one additional candidate that I've been completed with his background. Unfortunately, he's not answering the phone now. So I can only call someone so much to offer him a job. And I'll just have to move on from him. Maybe he changed his mind, but he won't even answer the phone. But that's kind of the numbers and sort of where we're at right now.
Sorry, Sergeant, I'm sorry. I think we started this process back maybe August, July, August
Right.
timeframe.
Right.
And it seems we've got a net increase of, what, 2 positions?
We do. We do.
We're into March.
Right.
I know we had a number of qualified candidates.
We do. I've
Throughout.
had several of those candidates have dropped out of the process. They've either changed their mind, they've decided not to come.
Is that due to the length of time that's involved in the process? I mean, it just seems to be, sort of strange that we're into 6 months, 7 months, and we've had a net increase of 2.
Right.
That just,
Yes, sir. One of those candidates that dropped out of the process did it due to family reasons. A father-in-law contracted COVID in upstate New York, and he actually had to move his family there rather than move here to take the job. So that's a circumstance out of our control. And one of our other candidates decided to take a position with Georgia Southern University because they pay for his college, and he wants to finish his degree. And currently, we don't do tuition reimbursement in Glynn County, so that was a big factor.
what do we need to do to enhance this entice, is it salary, is it working conditions, is it?
The presentation that I'll present with the pay study, I think, will address a lot of that in number 5, I believe it is on the agenda, or 6 that we were going to reverse them. But I'll be covering a lot of the problems that we're having, I think, or how we may fix some of that and get some more candidates.
Okay.
In addition to that, we are shorthanded in the administrative division as well. Captain Gene Smith retired, and so we don't have a captain in admin, and we still have not been able to fill another officer position in admin because obviously we can't fill a spot in admin when we're short on the road. So it's sort of the chicken and the egg. Which one do you hire first? Do you try to fill the position in admin to help further along that process, or do we make sure that we have coverage on the road? So we're also in the middle in the admin division of implementing our $3.2 million Axon deal. So we've actually been training. That's why my voice is a little strained. I've been putting officers through their Taser 7 training and their Axon Body 3 training, and nothing but rave reviews from the officers so far. It's cleared up their workflow, and I know I'm getting a little off topic, but we've been cycling that in as well. And in addition to that, we've been issuing out our new load-bearing vests, and it's been a very intensive training process. Also, unfortunately, Sergeant Kirk in the admin division recently had COVID, and he was out for 2 weeks, and so it put us another person short in admin. So we're doing the best that we can right now. But hopefully, I can make some more progress, with getting these other CVSAs done and getting these folks on board. So.
And I heard you mention you're going to make your presentation in reference to the pay.
Yes.
Outside of that, is there anything else the panel can do to help streamline or help speed up the process? Because I very much like Mr. Basham, we talked about this almost a year ago.
Right.
And we had a significant number of certified candidates.
Right.
Already in the queue.
Right.
But yet it doesn't seem like we're making as much progress as we'd like. So is there something that the panel can do to help in the capacity outside of the pay? We understand that that's a factor.
Sure. Now, I would like to remind the panel that in July, August, and September, we hired almost a total of 9 officers. And now, again, we've lost 6 more, so we're kind of, we're back to square one almost. And so in all of my time that I've been in admin, several different stints over the past few years, that has kind of sort of always been the problem. As soon as we gain some ground, we turn around and we lose people. And I'll explain some of that with the pay study. I'll be very frank with you. A lot of it is pay. And we're going to go into some of the history when I make that presentation and things of that nature. In addition, under past administrations, a lot of it was morale. I can tell you now, I talk to the guys regularly in patrol, especially doing their training. We're spending a lot of time together and talking with them. Morale has completely turned around.
Good.
Chief Evans is moving us in the right direction. We're continuing to do things that Chief Wiggins put in place, and the morale is constantly, rising right now. Some of the major other issues that are making people consider things right now, one of the big things is pay. So.
Okay.
Did you correct me if I'm wrong, did you say the officers transferred to the sheriff's department at a pay increase of $10,000?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The sheriff was able to hire those officers in at roughly 51,000 some change a year, and 2 of those officers were making $40,000 a year working for us. So
That just seems to me to be totally, I mean, there's something wrong with that picture.
yes, sir.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think hopefully when we see your presentation tonight, that
Yes,
we
sir.
can get a better gauge and better understanding of how we can move forward to alleviate those things from happening. And again, I understand that the county, and it's more than just, this panel is more than just the police department.
Right.
And there's a lot of things pulling on the county resources.
Yes, sir.
But we have to do something to provide what we need to serve and protect our citizens.
Right. I would also like to remind the panel that out of those 129 positions, 8 of those are the Department of Justice COPS grant positions, which we never had filled in the first place. Those are extra. And I know that's only 8 positions, but it doesn't, it does help some. We never had those filled, so those are still extra. Now, we obviously want to take advantage of those positions that we were granted under that and be able to fill those and have that extra resource out there, working for the community. But 8 of those weren't even filled even prior to any of this. So.
Is there a way, when we talk about the background checks, I know you're stretched, the department's stretched, is there a way to contract some of that out that could help us move quicker, that, is there, I guess we're all looking for solutions to try to help the process.
Sure,
And
sure.
The other question is, we had talked about briefly, we know like in Camden, there is some type of bonus structure for coming on. Is
Right.
that ever been looked at and presented?
I've got that actually in the pay study presentation, and I know
Okay.
you and I communicated a little bit. I was able to get a pretty thorough presentation tonight, so hopefully you guys will get a lot of information out of that. As far as contracting out, there are some companies, through some of the training that I've done that I've come across that you can contract it out. I'm not sure what the fees would be that are involved with that, but we could certainly take a look at that.
Is that something that might help the process? Because I understand what you were saying, well, we got this fellow through, and then all of a sudden, we don't hear a call from him, and I think the question in the back of my mind is part of that because of the delay, and he found something else along the way while he was waiting?
Sure, and I'll be very honest with you. I'm sure sometimes that is the case. The recruiting position is a full-time position. It really is, and unfortunately, right now we don't have the resources in the administrative division or in the department period to allow that to happen. If that was all that I was doing, full-time, it could be done a lot quicker. But we cover so many different things, and we have so many different hats that we wear, and that's okay. We're trying our best, but we want to be better. So outside of additional manpower, we can look into trying to contract some of it out.
Is there anything that can be done, and again, this is more maybe a question, because I don't understand the connection with HR, but who does the background checks for other county employees outside of the police department?
Human resources.
Is there a possibility of handing some of these background checks and things over to human resources? Again, I don't know what the resources are, so Mr. Hours, I know you're sitting down there, sir. I'm not trying to put any additional work on your staff, but just asking the question of, is that a possibility?
Mr. Chairman, I certainly think it is a possibility. We'll have to check with them in terms of whether or not they have the resources, but I think we can probably figure out how to reallocate the background checks to ensure that it gets done in a timely fashion, and I'll certainly talk with the chief about that to see what we can do to speed up the process.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I think that may help understanding that resources are scarce everywhere.
Right. Yes, sir.
But if we, as Glynn County, can pull together and help across all avenues, maybe it can keep our folks moving and be able to hire in a more efficient manner.
Yes, sir.
Just so I can get a notion of the time frame, from, if there is an average time, from the time a candidate becomes a candidate who is a candidate in process until that person can be cleared and come on duty.
Right.
How much time are we talking about there?
Currently, we're talking roughly 2.5 to 3 months before I can get them. From the moment that I receive their application from Human Resources until I can get an actual start date, it is usually about 2.5 to 3 months. Because again, you know, it's a full-time job, and if I could do that uninterrupted, then we could certainly get that down to probably within a month, I would imagine, depending on some outer factors with testing and things that are out of our control. But again, when we're pulled in so many different directions, we have to meet our training requirements because that's something that admin handles as well. So we have to do our training to keep our officers' hours up and things of that nature. And so it's roughly right now about 2.5, 3 months.
And if there's a way to generalize it, are most of these folks currently employed and just, you know, so they've got a paycheck coming in other words?
They do. The majority of them, because they're certified candidates, the majority of them are already working in another police department. So, and I'm very honest with them. When I first make that contact with them, I explain to them, listen, our process right now is running about 3 months. And so, you know, they'll usually be, most of them are saying, that's okay, you know, I'm already working, and just we'll work through the process. And that's why some of them that are not currently employed but maybe still hold a police certification, you know, they still have a job, you know, they're okay. And so that, you know, that usually, you know, that tides them through, of course, until we can get them a start date. So,
Sure.
but we again, you know, we do our best, and we're trying. So
Have we presented your pay issue to the commission directly?
I haven't presented anything that I was preparing, because originally the PAP asked for it, and so I've been working on it, and again, I've been working on it after hours because my priority during the day is trying to get these background checks done and our training and everything else. But I was able to finally get what I think is a pretty thorough presentation, and I wanted to, in communicating a bit with Commissioner Quinn, I wanted to come back and present it to you guys first. And then, you know, because, and again, even though I've got a decent presentation put together, it's a work in progress. And it's just, a lot of it is explaining why we're at where we're at, and then maybe what we think can fix that moving forward. So
I think in the past, I know we talked about them coming back to the panel, and the panel having some discussion, and then making potentially a suggestion to the commissioners about pay. But we didn't have the data and the information at that time to make that suggestion.
right.
When you get a break, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, sir.
The process with HR for background investigations, is there any stipulation on time periods, or when something becomes backlog, is there some type of thing in place for them to clear the backlog quickly? Or I'm just trying to get a feel. We can talk offline about this, but I'm just trying to understand what the process is in writing as far as the authorities to go, and also what the job entitles.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys, the police department's handling the background because we feel like that's the more expedient way to do it at this point, because you're there, you're watching the files and everything.
Yes, sir.
I think with what we've seen in the past with HR, there was some kind of disconnect between the HR and the police department. And so I think for me and this panel, the question is, how do we help you
Right.
and get from 90 days to 30 days?
Sure.
And we'll need some hard suggestions
Okay.
in regards to what that looks like.
Right.
Is it contracting out with a third party? Is it looking at bringing in another admin, non-sworn position? We just need to know.
Right.
And I think when I'm listening to what everyone is saying is, tell us what you need to
Sure,
to get it down in lower than 90 days.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can sit down with the chief, and we can definitely come up with some hard suggestions to try to solve some of these problems.
If it's legal, I am willing to volunteer time as a non-sworn, if that's even legal.
All right, we can have conversations and maybe contact the county attorney and see what's feasible as it relates to that. Are there any more questions about our recruitment update? All right. So if none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the pay study breakdown.
I'd actually ask, do you guys mind if we swap 4 and 5, just because the pay study is a little bit lengthy, and I could try to cover the facilities quickly and just kind of get past that?
Absolutely not. I need you to do that right now. No, I'm kidding. Sure, we can definitely do that and move on to item number 5. Cost analysis update current facilities to address our space needs.
Panel members, if you remember, we did go through a pretty lengthy presentation on some space needs assessments, and there were some lofty ideas for moving forward. And one of the things Commissioner Quinn kind of directed was, let's maybe take more of a look at being able to expand the evidence room and the possibility of moving the Special Investigations Unit down to the current space where our gym is housed. So I focused on that. I did get with our facilities department. Currently, the SIU division upstairs, the Special Investigations Unit, is about 764 square feet. The current gym, the way it is configured now, is about 1,025 square feet. Upstairs and allotted to SIU, there are 10 investigator positions allotted to the Special Investigations Unit, 8 investigators and 2 supervisors. Currently upstairs, they have 8 cubicles and 1 office. So that's 9 workstations and 10 people assigned to the division. Now they're shorthanded right now. So, you know, it's not a major deal. Somebody's not without a desk. If in 2017, the Criminal Investigations Division on the first floor of the department was completely remodeled, new cubicles put in and all of that. Going off of that model, if we were to put those type of cubicles in our current gym space, we would have room for 10 full cubicles and still be in ADA compliance. If we were to move ahead in the future and take the wall out that we talked about between the current CID and the gymnasium that would be SIU, we'd have additional room for at least 2 more offices and a space for the division admin assistant. But as it sits now, without any additional walls coming down or anything, if they just went into that room and installed those same cubicles, we could immediately put 10 in. To give you a reference point for some cost, back in 2017 when the CID Criminal Investigation Division project was done, for all of the cubicles to go in, which mind you in CID was 16 cubicles total, was $51,805 for the cubicles. Additional electrical and IT costs from Miller Electric was $10,317. So if it was less cubicles and probably less electrical work, I would imagine that if you combine those two, they could probably convert the gym to a new SIU office for probably under $61,000. I'm sure prices have gone up some in the last couple of years. Now, as far as upstairs goes, once SIU is out of that space, I do not have a cost analysis yet of what it would take to expand evidence. You know, I haven't had, again, I've focused on some other things and I've just tried to put together some preliminary numbers. So that's kind of where we're at with that. If we just focused on maybe moving SIU down and then maybe expanding evidence as a good fix right now to give SIU more office space, combine them on the first floor with CID a lot closer, and then expand the evidence room, which would obviously, even though they're getting that new shelving, it would give them much more room to be able to, you know, work and do what they need to up in evidence.
Is there any way that we can get that cost analysis in written or electronic format so that we can actually review it? I mean, I appreciate you giving numbers, but I'm a visual guy.
Right. I can reach back out to facilities. I think it would be more appropriate if facilities would lead the project and actually get some estimates and do those things. And I'll be happy to reach back out to Mr. Moses, who's the interim director of facilities, and see if he can assign someone to do that. And maybe we can have those in writing for
Absolutely.
some estimates.
Would definitely appreciate that. Any other questions about our cost of this analysis for the facilities? Charlie, Ricky, any questions?
None for me.
All right. Then we'll move on to
No questions.
item number 5, which was the 04.
Ms. Pontello's passing out just a printed version of the PowerPoint that we're about to go over. I thought that may help you. I did have a correction at the last minute that I caught. So there is, later on in the presentation, there is a handwritten correction that I had to make. I apologize for that, but I did catch it at the last minute. So I'm going to cover a lot of information in this pay study presentation. One thing that we have talked about recently is the fact that for many, many years, pay at the police department has not maintained a level to equal market parity. Things from year to year due to budget processes, like career track and tuition reimbursement and other things like that have gone away over the years. Same with merit increases, which were tied to evaluations. So there's been numerous factors over the years that have caused a lot of compression of pay. Specifically, if you go back as far as when we went 8 fiscal years without a raise, without a merit increase or COLA. And so what happened was folks that were hired right before that ended up right after that, people being hired at the same pay rate that they were. And they'd already been working at the department 7, 8 years. And so that's a problem. Even still today, again, I can't speak for who was hiring people before me, but there's people right now that have just been hired that have less experience than people working there that are making more money than them. And we need to fix that. We have to fix that moving forward. There should never be a situation where a field training officer is making less money than the new recruit that they are training, except for the odd situation where maybe we hire somebody that has 20 or 25 years of experience from another agency. There could be that possibility, but should be very rare if it happens. In addition to that, we have some officer positions that make more money than sergeants and lieutenants. And I don't think that's right, and I don't think that should ever happen. I think that those positions, they've earned those positions, and they should be compensated with the pay. So moving forward on the first slide, based on Forbes.com, just to give you an example, police officer salary comparison between neighboring states. You guys can take a look at that. As you see, Georgia average salary is $44,700. We are comparable with South Carolina and Tennessee and Alabama. Florida obviously is a lot higher than us. Moving forward to the next slide. Based on the U.S. Labor Bureau of Statistics for average police officer salaries in Georgia, they have it at $42,990. Again, our starting salary is $39,312. If you look at those percentiles, that would put us down in about the third percentile at that starting salary. The 10 bottom ranked states for police officer salaries in the nation, according to Forbes.com, we're the 45th ranked state in average salary, again at $44,700. Just to give you an idea of what we're looking at.
Could I ask a question, sir?
Sure.
Is that a raw number, or are factors like cost of living factored into that ranking?
Those are raw numbers. The cost of living is not figured into that.
Okay.
Okay, so a little bit of background. Our compensation adjustment history in Glynn County, going back to 2002 through 2019. In 2002, a new payment plan was implemented. This was based on a 1.5 to 2 year classification and compensation study conducted by Maximus Incorporated, resulted in establishing new classification and compensation system, including new job titles, new pay ranges, job descriptions, etc. A job analysis was performed for every position. A comprehensive position questionnaire was filled out. A job classification was done, and then a classification evaluation based on the Archer Matrix point factor, which Archer is the company we use, I believe, to do our evaluations and several other things through the Human Resources Department. The evaluation yielded a quantitative measure of the duties, responsibilities, and complexity of each classification. A market survey was done to assess the labor market wage. The survey included local government jurisdictions within proximity to Glynn County, similar population, demographics, and scope of service. A pay plan was developed, and once approved, it went into effect in 2002. There was no change until 2005. There were no COLAs, there were no increases, there was nothing until 2005. There was a market adjustment of 3%. An in-house salary survey was conducted using 60 benchmark positions. 18 local governments, again, similar in size, participated, And then our pay plan was adjusted by 3% to maintain market parity in 2005. In 2008, again, nothing between 2005 2008, there was a market adjustment of 3%. Again, same process. In-house salary survey, 74 benchmark positions were examined. In fiscal year 2016, I apologize, 2016, yeah, or 15, we reinstated the merit pay increases. The county put a cap on that. The merit increases originally were based on your performance evaluation, anywhere from 0 to 5, based on what you made on your evaluation is the percentage of raise you got for that year. That process began to create compression in itself. Certain supervisors knew that that was tied to your pay. So they knew if you got a 4.9% score, a 4.9 on your eval, you're getting a 4.9 raise. If you got a 3.2, you were getting a 3.2 raise. Certain supervisors did not want that impacting officers' pay, so they would give officers higher scores, even sometimes when they didn't deserve it. You may have hardline supervisors that even if you were a better officer than some folks, had been there longer, working harder, they may still only give you a 3.5, 3.7. So again, it began to create some compression just based on that. But in 2015, when they reinstated the merit pay increases, they capped it at a 4% maximum. You couldn't get any more than 4%. I mean, even if you got a 5 on your eval, you couldn't, or 4.5, 4.9, you couldn't get any higher than 4%. Again, used to be it was up to 5%. In fiscal year 2016, phase 1 of a classification and compensation plan upgrade was implemented. Employees with base salary below the new minimum rate were provided an increase that brought the employee's base salary up to the new minimum rate. A lot of this was based on what pay grade they were in. If they were an investigator and the new plan was put in, then they were brought up to what that new box put them at. Well, what happened was you had numerous officers that had been here less time than other folks, but because they may be assigned to an investigative division, they immediately got bumped to that new level. And so therefore they're making more money than somebody who had been there longer, in patrol maybe, because it didn't affect those positions. Again, merit increases were 4% maximum, and career track promotions were eligible in 2016. Give me just a moment to look at my notes. Okay, I apologize. Let me jump back to 2008. Part of that market adjustment of 3%, that in-house salary survey and the market study, Human Resources recommendation in 2008 was to increase the pay plan by 15% across the board. And in 2008, after getting that recommendation, the Board of Commissioners increased it 3%. So in 2008, again, Human Resources conducted the in-house survey, recommended 15% to get us up to market parity in 2008, and the board approved 3%. So now moving back, 2017, phase 2 of the classification and compensation plan was implemented. And it brought other employees making below the new minimum rate up to the new boxes. Again, it was the same based on 2016. They again adjusted some boxes depending on the pay grade or the assignment that people were in. Some moved up, some stayed where they were. It just continued to create, compression within the different pay grades. In 2018, a COLA and retention was given of 1.3% for all non-public safety employees and an 11.3% COLA for public safety. The background on that was the state of Georgia gave all of their public safety employees, Georgia State Troopers and DNR Rangers, they gave them a 20% raise. And so in order to try to remain competitive, the board did an 11.3% raise for public safety across the board, and a 1.3% COLA. I apologize, let me see. And then 2019, career track was brought back in 2018, or still made eligible, I should say, and merit increases were capped at 3% at that point based on your evaluation. So again, it came down to 4%, then came back down to 3%. And then in 2019, there was a COLA of 2.1% for all employees, and the merit increase then was dropped down to 2% maximum on your evaluation. So you could only get a 2% max if you scored at least above a 2. And then career track promotions were still available. Human Resources only had the information compiled through 2019. I'll tell you, 2020, and we didn't have career track. We've not had that for some time now, and so we've got a lot of people that were eligible for those pay raises and pay grade promotions, but they've just been sitting stagnant. They can't get those because career track.
Sergeant, at what point does an officer reach the $44,700 salary? I know they start at 39 something, but
Right.
is it a 3-year, you become a,
That would be roughly at the 6-year mark with all of their career tracks. If COLA or merit increases were in place again, at about the 6-year mark, once they become a Master Police Officer 1, they would be close to that. Probably a little less, about 43, but they would be close to that. So it takes them 6 years to get to what, the average, starting is right now. So, again, some pay compression and retention issues. Starting salaries of new employees have risen higher and faster than far longer tenured coworkers over the years. Internal equity has not been addressed consistently through the years. In order to avoid major morale and flight risk retention issues, these issues will need to be addressed with a combination of these suggested steps. New salary ranges to bring a starting officer's pay to a more consistent level with statewide and national standards. We need to adjust the boxes again. We need to move those up, and we need to be in line with what statewide and national standards are. I believe that we need to incorporate longevity step increases, give officers a reason to stay, and that may be in the manner of a financial bonus. COLA adjustments when possible for each year. Merit increases do not need to be tied to an evaluation because that creates compression. An evaluation should simply be an evaluation of an employee or an officer's performance by their supervisor. If the board could commit to possibly a 1% COLA every year, and then we understand if the budget is down, if we have another instance like COVID or something, and they have to remove that 1% COLA, that's okay. That's a 1% impact. The other things, a career track has to stay in place. Career track cannot be a year-to-year budget decision. Right now, our budget analyst and the command staff can go ahead and budget out the next 15 years of when officers will be available for their career track increases. So we can tell you the budget impact ahead of time. It should not be a budget year decision year to year because officers are hanging then. Officers are left hanging in there. Do I get career track next year? Do I not? Do I get my 5% increase or do I not? And so it has to be a permanent career track. It can't be attached, I don't believe, to budget ups and downs. With those such incentives in place, employees will be motivated to stay within the department. We'll have higher retention rates. Currently, we're hiring and training employees only to have them leave within several years for a job with a better salary. We'll have better qualified employees.
If I can, let me ask a quick
Yes.
question. We're at that point. What percentage do you, when you say employees only have them leave within several years, at what time frame? 6 years, 8 years, 10 years? What have you seen to be the average? And I know it's different from each person.
Right. I've seen the average be usually within 2.5 to 4.5 years, they make a decision and they realize either career track's not going to be here, it was promised it was in place when I was hired, or it was, and then now it's been taken away. I don't see that they feel like I don't see that there's any more raises coming or room for moving up or improvement. And so they make a decision then. I'm going to move on and I'm going to find something with better salary. A lot of times that is still within law enforcement with other agencies. And there are the occasions where folks just go into the private sector and try to make more money. We'll have better qualified employees. By maintaining a permanent career track, employees will be motivated to learn and grow within their roles. The career track rewards the officer professionally and financially. And what I want the panel to understand is career track requires advanced training hours. So at the point that an officer gets to be a Master Police Officer 3, that requirement total over those 8 years would be 800 training hours, advanced training hours. So we want better trained officers working for our department and serving our community. A permanent career track encourages them to go after that advanced training because they're getting a reward of a 5% increase when they reach those career track steps. The department is in a better position to hire. With updated pay and incentives, the department will be able to hire better qualified candidates with backgrounds in law enforcement, hopefully. They'll understand case law, state law, and how the criminal justice system operates, I hope. Hopefully we can attract better qualified candidates, even so than what we're getting. And I think we can. I think we can compete with some of the bigger agencies because we have a great area for folks to move to if we can get our pay where it needs to be. And then the ability to build department leaders. With better pay and incentives, current tenured employees will be more motivated to step up into different roles and take on new assignments as needed. And I will address a little bit later in the presentation some of our lack of experience currently within the department. These are the new suggestions for the pay ranges that we have put forward. The old salary ranges are underneath, and they're shown in the parentheses for each grade. So currently under grade 15, a police officer 1, the minimum salary is $39,312, the midpoint is 51, and the max is 62. The recommendation for PO1 would be to move that minimum starting pay for a certified officer to $43,800 a year. The midpoint would move to 54, the maximum would move to 65.
Could you give some time frames on these? I mean, what is midpoint for police officer 1? 6 years, 8 years?
It is dependent upon if career track is in place, whether that increases their money. It is dependent upon whether a COLA is in place. It depends upon whether a merit increase is in place. If none of those things are in place, they will remain at that minimum pay until any of that comes back and is in place.
So could I ask you, what are these numbers based on? Is there some backup that you could point to that, is this something that you just sort of plucked out of the air, or is this something that someone has done research on in terms of?
For the new minimums that we're suggesting, for the new
I'm
numbers?
saying these numbers that are on this sheet.
Right. The numbers in
What are these
parentheses.
based on?
The numbers in parentheses come from our current public safety pay classification from Glynn County. The numbers in parentheses, those, the minimum, midpoint, and maximum, those are the numbers directly from Glynn County. That's what the Human Resources in Glynn County sets. Those are the pay grades. Now, what I did was I looked at the nationwide average, and I looked at the statewide average. And so right in that middle of that average for a minimum starting pay was $43,800. And then what we did was we moved up the midpoint and the maximum in comparison with what the same percentages that it would be. What Human Resources does is they base the midpoint at a 28% amount above the minimum hiring pay, and the maximum is 28% above the midpoint. So I stayed with that same formula that Human Resources currently uses to conduct and use these new boxes. Also what I did was overall, I took all salaries within the department, I broke it down by each pay grade, and I determined the highest paid officer in that pay grade, the lowest paid, and what the average was. And so a lot of these boxes are based on what some of those averages were. And they're consistent with, again, statewide and nationwide levels that I've researched. So.
Have you done any determination as to if we raise it, $4,000 for the minimum?
I have. I'll go.
Number.
Yep, that's
Okay,
coming
you
at
got
the end
that.
of the presentation.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So as you can see down the list there, again, at pay grade 18, you see there's Master Police Officer 2 and Sergeant 1. Currently on our own classification, those do fall within the same pay grade. Again, I don't think that a sergeant should make the same or less money than a subordinate officer. A Sergeant 1 is where you first attain rank. You have to test for that. You have to interview for that. You have to be selected to a sergeant's position. I do believe that you should automatically, you should move up to a higher pay grade because you have much increased liability and responsibility, and you're supervising subordinate employees. So I think that has to happen.
Quick
Yes,
question for you, and I know we are talking about moving to different positions, some of it based on pass an exam and opportunity for promotion.
Right.
But what's the time frame, general time frame between a police officer 1 moving to a police officer 2?
If career track is in place, you're allowed to move from police officer 1 to police officer 2 in 2 years, as long as you've met the career track requirements, which is the advanced training hours.
Okay.
So as long as you met the advanced training hours outlined in our career track, at the 2-year mark, if career track is in place, then you basically submit your request to be moved up a pay grade, and you become a police officer 2. 2 years after you've been in grade as a police officer 2, if you've also achieved the next set of advanced training hours, then you can apply and put your request in to be a master police officer 1. So every 2 years is what career track is set up. So they can achieve, if career track is in place, simply by itself, in 8 years, they can achieve a master police officer 3, making a minimum of $53,000, 8 years from their hire date, which would be about a $10,000 increase over 8 years, constantly, raising their salary and improving. Right now, currently, we don't have a year requirement in policy as far as when you can become a sergeant. Well, I apologize. Is that 4 years now?
Excuse me, I have one
4 years.
question. The
Yes.
career track criteria, how is that set?
The career track was developed and implemented through in-house department research, and it has been in place. It was in place prior to my coming to the admin division, and we've tweaked it a few times. But basically, it was a command staff review of what should be the requirements to move up in career track. And again, it is based on advanced training hours or a combination of advanced training hours and college credit hours. You can do a combination of both because some officers are applying themselves at the same time to attend college. But that's kind of what it was set on. Because of advanced training hours, that means that you're applying yourself as an officer, you're attending advanced training, you are making yourself a more rounded, better trained officer.
Okay, and then was there a look at, when you did your averages or found your averages, was there a look at their requirements or the departments that have different averages or higher averages, a look at their requirements to advance?
I apologize, I was speaking with the chief. Mr. Walker, can you repeat that?
Sure. In coming up with the averages, I know that the pay amount was looked at and averaged out among state and national. Were the requirements also looked at and compared against state and national?
No, sir. I have not had a chance to break that down and look at the requirements. Not all agencies use a career track. That's one thing that used to be a great recruitment tool and retainment tool when we first implemented it, because many agencies don't have any sort of career track. You're hired in and you're at what you're at until maybe you can get promoted to a ranking position such as a corporal or a sergeant in many departments. But no, I've not had the chance to break down other departments and if they have a career track, what those requirements are. No, sir.
One quick question.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
copy. I was just asking that, I'll talk to you offline. I'll come down to the station and talk to you.
Okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Hours, if you would help me, beside each of these positions is a grade. Is that grade specific for the police department, or is that across the county employee grade? All employees who are grade 15, that's their minimum maximum, is the question I'm asking.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Quinn. I think it was either in 2017 or 2017. The county moved away from a general grade system for all employees and separated out. So now since then, we've had a public safety officer grade. And so this is not only for police officers, but other public safety officers as well. We moved away from that, but it's not general employees, but it is public safety officers, which includes many more than just police officers.
Okay, so that's I think the question I'm sort of getting to is, how many, not only in the police department but it reflects also all other public safety employees, and that would include the fire department, sheriff's department.
Yes, sir.
EMA, is that correct, or?
For example, Commissioner Quinn, grade 15 under the public safety pay plan includes Deputy Sheriff 1, Fire Inspector 1, Firefighter EMT 3, Firefighter Paramedic 1, Police Officer 1, Supervisor 2, and Communications. All those are included in grade 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that again, that's where we can hire in a police officer at, but that is the pay grade established for all of those positions countywide. So I'm not sure, again, how that was originally.
So So if that's county, and it applies to the sheriff's department as well?
It does. It
then
does.
Why does a police officer one come on board at X amount, and the sheriff's deputy comes on board at $10,000 more? I don't understand that.
I was going to
I
ask
can't
the
answer
same
that
I mean,
question.
if it's a countywide structure,
I under-
how can that, I don't,
I understand. In the pay classification, there's also a suggested hiring range as well for each grade, but I can't answer that question, Mr. Basham.
Mr. Basham, the number of years ago, the sheriff as a constitutional officer is not a part of the Glynn County paying classification system.
so they're
And s-
separate.
Right, separate, and so within the sheriff's budget, and it doesn't matter whether it's a current sheriff, previous sheriff, I'm not saying an individual, just the sheriff's budget, by being a constitutional officer, he can pay his personnel whatever he wants to, as long as he stays within that budget.
Within the budget.
Right, and so a number of years ago, and I can't define when that period of time was, but the sheriff, and there, at that point in time, there's a discrepancy between what police officers' pay was and the sheriff's deputy was. And so that is an issue, but, I'm not sure exactly how you address it, other than, addressing these scales, so.
I mean, that just seems to me fundamentally wrong. I'm not degrading the services of the sheriff's department, but given the responsibilities of the two organizations, it just seems to me, David, I don't know what, Commissioner, I mean, it just seems.
And one thing too, and I understand, I don't mean to change the subject quickly. Going back to the pay grades here, I am not suggesting that all of these pay grades should be increased for this entire public safety classification list. That's beyond me. I don't know how Human Resources or the county would handle that. I'm just saying for police officers, our salaries within those need to change to these new amounts. Does that?
And that makes sense, but I think what I heard Mr. Hours say is because of the way that it's structured now,
Right.
it would impact all
Sure.
within the public safety, and
Sure.
that's something that the commission would have to bring up to
Right.
separate that out.
Right.
And we can have that conversation. Obviously, there's a lot more conversations that
Yes.
has to go into this.
Right, and that's
before
why
we're ready to move forward.
That's why I'd say a work in progress. There's so many things that are beyond my understanding is on the HR and board side. We're just kind of making these suggestions of what we think will help or work.
But I too, like Mr. Basham, just trying to understand how the sheriff's office, other than I understand that he or she's a constitutional officer, and they have that leeway within their purview to pay what they want as long as it stays within their budget. But it just seems like something doesn't balance with that.
Well, and I think the issue here is how do we get to a point that we can make it better for the Glynn County PD?
Right.
And I think that's, as we kind of unpack this, and we're kind of seeing the different, I don't know, differences, I guess is the best word I could use. How do we correct that? And then, as this panel will know, and you've heard from Mr. Hours, I mean, when we have a grade that affects all across public safety, that is a huge impact on the budget. So I'm glad to understand this better. I had always heard about it, so I appreciate what you're doing. So, but I think there is a desire for the commission to see how we can make this a better situation.
Right. Yes, sir.
At least to achieve parity.
Right.
I mean, I don't think you're asking for anything more than parity
Right.
with like positions
Right.
within the county. I just,
And that's within the county. For me, it's even like positions in adjacent counties, because those are also, and I use the word competitors for a lack of a better word, that's who some of our officers are leaving to go to, because they are potentially recruiting our folks over to Camden County or Wayne County or whatever the adjacent counties are.
Right. And
That causes us issues.
it should be noted, and I understand that we cannot compete with federal money. But it should be noted that FLETC is here in our community, and FLETC is a competitor with our department. We lose a many number of officers that go to FLETC as instructors. Again, please, I'm not completely familiar with all the GS grades and things like that, but the average instructor position at FLETC begins around $72,000. We get someone who's been with our department 8 to 10 years, has got some instructor certifications. If they can move over there to make $72,000, that's usually about a $15,000 or $20,000 raise for them at that point. Again, though, if we can get them up, and I'm not saying at 72, but if we can get them somewhere closer to that, it makes them stop and think maybe, why do I want to start over? I've already got time invested with Glynn County. Maybe I need to stay here. Are you always going to lose some folks? Sure. But, you know, there's a big difference. And and not discussing any numbers, I've talked with numerous people that you know, have good experience at our department. I've said, if you were to get an increase, a salary bump, what would that mean to you? And majority of the response was, wow, it would mean that I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stop looking. I'd be right here for the next 15, 20 years. That's what we need. That's where we need to get to.
And I think we can talk, and we're going to need to talk about this a lot more.
Right.
I'd like for you to at least get through your presentation.
Sure.
And then we can, there'll be conversations that need to be had both offline and as well as in future meetings.
Yes, sir.
Concerning this.
Yes, sir. Okay, moving ahead, retention and longevity issues continued. Currently in our patrol division, we have 36 police officer ones categorized in a pay grade of police officer 1. 80% of those 36 have less than 2 years experience with our department. 80% of those 36 officers have less than 2 years experience. Overall, across all of the grades, 77% of our department has less than 10 years experience. 77% has less than 10 years experience. Moving ahead, one thing that I believe that we can do is we can institute a hiring bonus. I believe that would help me with recruitment. My recommendation would be a $3,000 hiring bonus. Looking at statewide, that is about an average. Some agencies go as high as $5,000. Some drop down to $2,000 or $2,500. I believe a $3,000 hiring bonus, if it was spread out over a 5-year period, could be very effective. The reason you would need to spread it out is so obviously we don't pay someone, you know, a large sum up front and then they end up leaving. Or if you want to pay them a large sum up front and you try to have them sign a contract, then that's going to make folks shy away as well. But I believe if you went with a $3,000 hiring bonus, again, $500 when they're hired, and then you see the breakdown, it's basically $500 a year through their first 5 years.
And I know we're talking about a lot of other things, but how will that hiring bonus impact morale right now for if the county commissioners agreed to do the hiring bonus?
You would grandfather in all current employees that have been there 5 years and under, and they would immediately slide into this plan and begin receiving those bonuses, and I have all that financial worked out, and I can present those numbers to you. But that's how you would do it. Obviously, if you've been there more than 5 years, you know, you wouldn't be included in that. The discussion there would be possibly a one-time payment of $3,000 to the other employees that have been there, and I've got that figured up as well. So that, again, you don't create that, well, these new people are getting this money, I'm not, I'm out of here, you know. But that's, and again, a lot of work on the back end, but I believe it can definitely be done. I believe there needs to be longevity bonuses put in place. I think, again, let's remember, 77% of our department has less than 10 years experience. So when you're talking about a budget impact, paying someone a $1,000 bonus at their 10-year anniversary, it's not going to happen that often right now. Not going to happen because we don't have that many people that have an experience. But then obviously at 15 years, it'd be $1,500, and it would stop at 20 years at a one-time $2,000 bonus. Again, that could be something to look forward to that keep people, you know, hey, look, I am being rewarded for sticking it out and staying here. Because I'll be very honest, there are numerous of us, I've been here 16 years at the county, and when we went through those 8 years of nothing, very frustrating, but we didn't go anywhere. We stayed because we believe in this department, we believe in this community, and we need to take care of the folks that stay and that serve our community. In addition to that, tuition reimbursement needs to return, okay? We can budget that out based on projections, depending on what officers, you know, as long as they let us know what their progression within their college classes look like, we can budget that out to know what fiscal year they would achieve a degree. We would understand ahead of time for the next fiscal year how many officers are enrolled in college. I believe that it should be, you know, if they show proof that they made an A in a class, they should get 80% tuition reimbursement. A B would be 60 and a C would be 40. because our career track requires advanced training hours and/or a combination of college hours. In addition to that, in our promotional process, you receive additional points on your promotional score if you have a college degree. So we're requiring this to get more points in certain areas for officers, but we're not giving them any kind of pay back towards it. Again, we lost an officer to Georgia Southern that chose to go there because they pay for his college. You know, he said, I'll be the first person in my family to get a college degree, and they're going to make it happen. Whereas if we did tuition reimbursement, we might could have attracted that candidate. In addition, again, we've got several officers now that we used to do tuition reimbursement countywide, and then it went away. And so a lot of officers, that's frustrating, that it was there when they started, it was in place, and now it's gone. So that takes more money out of their pocket to continue their education.
With that said, would there be any commitment to the county that you remain?
There could be. That could be worked in. That absolutely could be worked in. That's something, again, we could discuss on the back end to
'Cause
work
my
that
thought
out.
process
Because there
is-
has to be some give and take.
Yeah, it has to
between-
be a benefit to the county long-term.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I think, and this is currently in place, and I believe it needs to stay in place moving forward, is the educational degree incentives. Currently, with Glynn County, you get a one-time educational incentive when you get these degrees at those different levels that you see. And I just believe that does need to stay in place because that does at least give officers something to look forward to if they're plugging away at college and if they're going to get a degree. So, all right, big budget impact numbers. If we did the pay classification alignment and moved everyone up to the new boxes that they need to move up to, that would be an impact on the budget of $1.2 million annually. The longevity incentives calculated out for all officers that are here currently moving forward, $36,500. Hire-on bonuses, if we implemented that for everybody currently that is 5 years and under, that would be $25,500. Overall budget impact moving forward of $1.3 million. I know that's a huge number, and again, a lot of that number crunching would be beyond my capability. This is just what I've been able to do. And again, this is a work in progress. We're open to ideas. We're open to ideas.
Yeah,
We just
no,
want to be able to have the conversation. We want to be able to see what we can.
I'm curious. I know it's a money issue, and I understand all that. But even with your recommendation, you're still $7,000 below what a deputy would start at the sheriff's department.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around that issue.
Right.
And they're, I mean, you're trying to seek parity here. And to me, you're still gonna, I mean, it's like we've taken one step forward and two steps back in this past year.
Yes, sir.
You're losing personnel. How is this affecting training? I mean, if you're still at the position we were 6-8 months ago, how's the training going? If you can't put officers on the street, how are you training them in the 10-hour shifts? And
The main benefit to the 10-hour shifts is we've been able to do a tremendous amount of training because the training days are built into the schedule. Now, what is slowly beginning to take an impact is if we're shorthanded, some of those officers on their training day may be needed to cover the other group shift on the first day back. Luckily, so far, overtime is a factor. They've been able to hire some other officers to work overtime so that we've been able to maintain our training on the schedule that we're trying to maintain to meet state accreditation eventually, to make sure we're meeting all those standards. And then again, to get our new technology out there, our Taser 7s and our body cameras and those things. We've been able to maintain that. It has just, there's going to be an overtime cost, obviously. And that, again, that's above my pay grade, but I know that's figured in and approved and some things like that. So, but right now we're able to maintain our training levels, but it is costing overtime on the back end because shifts have to be covered.
And I know that we've received a lot of information tonight.
Right.
I mean, you've thrown a lot of numbers and data at us, and
Yes, sir.
we're going to need some time to digest this.
Right.
And we need to have additional conversations.
Yes, sir.
And not just, in my opinion, not just at meetings.
Right.
That we have once a month.
Right.
So I'm committing to working with you, working with Chief, to continue our conversation about how can the panel help. We have Commissioner O'Quinn that has already acknowledged that something needs to be done. and the commission needs to address this in some shape, form, or fashion.
Right.
It's my opinion that as quickly as we can, have these conversations, gather additional information, solid information, have an understanding of the panel as a whole.
Right.
And then be able to present our suggestions to the commissioners so that they can start having those conversations.
Yes, sir.
And again, I know it's a budget issue, and we're all looking for ways to be efficient with our budgets.
Right. Yes, sir.
But in order to do what we said that we wanted to do with the police department, what this community deserves from the police department, I think this is a step that we have to start moving in sooner rather than later.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments in reference to the pay study breakdown that was given?
Mr. Chairman. Sergeant, perhaps I missed it. How does this affect the decompression problem that the department has?
Was he asking about the compression issue
Can
that
you
we
hear
have with
me?
pay?
Can you hear me? If you can turn your speakers down virtually, there wouldn't be so much feedback, and we might be able to understand you in here.
Yeah, Charlie, we're getting a lot of feedback on this end, so we weren't able to understand your question or your comment.
Okay, yes.
I just wanted to make one.
And my question is, Mr. Chairman and Sergeant, directed to you. A good presentation, but I'm not clear as to how this solves the pay compression problem. Can you enlighten me on that? Did I miss something?
In the past, unfortunately, there has not been consistency in the level at which officers are hired in at. Because these boxes and these ranges go from a minimum up to a maximum, a lot of times officers are hired in at a minimum. Sometimes we can articulate and ask for percentages above that. Our standard procedure is that we do a salary rate request letter, and we submit that to Mr. Hours and to Ms. Ora Reed, and they review that and honor that. I'll be very honest, I've never had one denied so far. In other words, if we're hiring an officer with 3 or 4 years experience, maybe we may ask for 3 or 4 or 5% above starting pay. But there's never been consistency in the past of a hard program of how you determine what, officers are hired in at. My recommendation would be that we adopt the requirements of our career track that's already in place in-house. And we set these new boxes, and once we set these new boxes, if an officer meets the requirements to be hired as a Master Police Officer 1, based on the number of training hours and things of that nature, we hire them as a Master Police Officer 1 at the minimum level of a Master Police Officer 1. Theoretically, they would be making what other Master Police Officer 1s would be making, except those that have been there, the year in between their 2 years of a career track step, if they got a 1% COLA, or if they brought, some other benefit back, those officers that are there would still continue to get a little bit more money, rather than no money at all, and then someone's hired in making exactly what they're making. But I think we have to be very strict in the classification at which we hire people in at. Again, it is really honestly up to our review of their experience and certifications and what percentage, we submit to try to get them in above, and I think that has to be fixed. We have to have a set standard of where they come in at. And I think that would help. Obviously, if you bump everyone currently who is here up to where they need to be, then anyone else that you're bringing in will either be below them or only equal to them. And if they're equal to them, it would be justified by years of experience, training, things of that nature. Now, that's where there's some give and take, too. Our officers have to understand, if we hire somebody in with 15 years of experience, they may come in as a Master Police Officer 1. They may be a pay grade above them. But that's where there's some give and take. They have to understand that person has paid their dues and got their education and training already. They're going to make a little more. That's where some give and take comes in. But I believe to solve the compression, and to give you an example, we've got 36 police officer 1s right now. Going down the list, the salaries of these police officer 1s, $39,000, $44,000, $47,000, $41,000, $40,000, $45,000. No consistency whatsoever, and that has to be fixed. if we can adopt these new pay plan, these new brackets and all, and appropriately move everyone up to where they, and what I did was when I did that, if they had been with the department a number, 5 years at this point, then they would immediately move to the midpoint of that new box to adjust them to where they appropriately should be. If they had been here 15 years or more, they moved to the maximum of the new boxes to, in other words, to fix what has not happened over the many past years, to get them where they need to be to fix compression. So anyone else being hired in would either be equal or lower, only depending on if they had vast amount of experience or not. But there's been no consistency, again, and that's why sometimes as well, you know, with career track not being there, we have supervisors currently, again, that make less than we have a lieutenant that makes less than a master police officer 3. And that should never happen. The reason is career track went away for a long time. And so that lieutenant said, you know what? My chance to make some money is to take a promotion. And so they took a promotion. Well, what happens when you take a promotion is you don't get any of those pay grades in career track. You don't get any of those additional pay grades that you would have gotten following career track. You only get the 5% increase for sergeant. That shouldn't happen. If you are qualified, even if you're a police officer 1 and you've got, you know, per policy, you've got the number of years in and all of that, and you test and you're selected and moved to sergeant, you should get every one of those pay increases in between, because what we have now is we have experienced officers that would probably make good supervisors that are saying, no, I'm not going to take that. I want to get my career track increases. So hopefully it'll come back next year. And so because they're losing money, especially when you compound those 5% increases over, you know, 4 career track increases over their career, that means a difference, you know, $20,000, $25,000 in their career. So we have to fix that. That's got to be fixed. And of course, we'll have further discussions on how we can fix that. But that's one of our big issues.
I just want to be clear about this, and I'll preface this by saying this is like super high math for somebody like me.
Trust me, numbers have been running together.
But the 1.275 million for the pay classification alignment, does that figure encompass the, you know, adjusting the starting salary to the point that you think it needs to be, but also does that figure include the funds that would be needed to solve the compression problem in the ways you've talked about, by bringing these folks who've been there a number of years up to the box they need to be in, if that makes sense?
It would. And what I've done is I've, based on the percentages of the new boxes, again, if they were, you know, if they're under 5, you know, years or at the 5-year mark to the midpoint, what I've done is I've gone through every salary in the department and basically determined what percentage that would be to bring them up to where they need to be to solve the compression issue. And for many of us that have been here more than 15 years, it would put us where we would have been if career track and merit increases and all the things that were promised when we were hired hadn't gone away. And it would fix a lot of those problems, but it would solve the compression now, and then we would have to set the strict standards of the hiring moving forward to not let compression happen again. But yeah, I've actually gone through every salary and done the percentages, and I've got a breakdown between every pay grade of what it would cost to move those positions up to where they would need to be to solve the compression issue.
You know,
And it will be different percentages. Some officers may get a greater percentage than others, but it's based on what pay grade, you know, and how many years and things of that nature. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe this is the 3rd briefing that you've given us on this issue.
Yes, sir.
And the needle has not moved. So we need to figure out, Mr. Chairman, how we can try to help this needle move. And to me, the only path to achieving that is sitting down with the commission and having this conversation, and I believe Mr. Hours as well. And what do we need to do? What does this county need to do in order to bring parity, rectify this clearly unequal pay problem that we have here? And I believe Mr. Chairman, the only way we can do that is present this to the commission and get their feedback, get their cooperation to at least say, okay, we're willing to sit down and talk about this and jointly figure out how we're going to go forward. I mean, but for you to keep coming back to this panel and stressing your point, making your point,
Right. And I
we're
was,
just not, we're just not moving the needle on this.
right.
And
And
I
I
think
did
we
take, I
have-
did take over the project midpoint, because the officer that was handling it got promoted, and so he wasn't able to continue. So I kind of had to, I chose to start over, go back to the source, get all my information from Human Resources. So that is kind of why I presented a brief presentation previously, and then I tried to go into much more detail and spend some more time on it best I could. But I would agree with you, Mr. Basham. I think, we do need to try to sit down and figure something out.
Absolutely, sooner rather than later. And that was my point of
Yes, sir.
having some offline. We can't wait till next meeting
Right.
to have another conversation about the same thing that we talked about 5 meetings ago.
Yes, sir.
So I agree with you, Mr. Basham, that sooner rather than later, we need to have a conversation with the commission.
Well, I think the next work session in April, maybe we could have something prepared and ready to go. I would encourage it, this presentation probably needs some more work
Yes, sir.
before it goes before the commission. I think you also have to weigh in. There have been some significant investments by the county into the police department this past year. The Axon contract is, $400,000 to $600,000 a year over the next 5 years. So there's a lot to weigh in, but I know there is a feeling amongst the commissioners I've spoken to of, how do we make this right and get to a point where it helps lift morale. And so I think this is a great start. I think from the board's panel's perspective, need to help the police department get to that point to be able to make a presentation that is really
Right. And that,
tight, I guess.
that would be my goal, is to tighten up the presentation.
Yes,
Be
sir.
able to make that to the commission. And then at that point, it's up to the commission to start to move forward. And the panel, we're not constantly having the discussion about it. We've done our due diligence, and now we've moved it on to
I think we're all in
what's in the
violent
best.
agreement on this subject.
Absolutely.
And my last point would be, I know you say this is your part-time job, recruiting and doing all this analysis. Do you need help?
Yes, sir.
To pull together a presentation to address the issues.
Yes, sir. Again, to be frank, this has been done at my dining room table at 10, 11 o'clock after the kids go to bed. And I only have so much experience when it comes to budgets, and a lot of the human resources thing is beyond my, comprehension or pay grade, I would say. Because again, I know my focus is getting officers hired. I want officers on the road, and I want officers out there serving the community. In addition to that, training our officers. Training is the most important thing we can provide for our officers, in addition to pay. And so those are my priorities. So yes, sir, I would need help, and I need help from folks that know a lot more about this than I do. Again, I've tried my best to, crunch these numbers and try to come up with some ideas, but I do.
Is there any internal resources that are available within the department that have this capability to pull something together? Or would you need to go outside to look to someone that could bring in to help you pull together a presentation?
I'd like to consult with the chief, and I guess we can talk about that and make
Okay.
try to figure that
Okay.
out, if we have the internal resources
I'd
to
like
do
for you
it.
to look at that.
Right, yes, sir.
And I would encourage, when you're talking to the chief, also potentially the chief and Mr. Hours talk. I don't know what the
Sure.
resources are of the county, and
Right.
and I do know that there are some talented people
Right.
that work for Glynn
Yes,
County
sir. Yes, sir.
that could potentially help put together a really good presentation
Right,
to make to the commissioners.
sure.
I just want you to know the work session is April 20th, so you can have that date in mind. Work session is going to be the 20th.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions, comments?
I'd just like to make a comment. Sergeant Scoggins, that it's obvious to me the amount of work that went into this presentation and the, the detail behind it. I guess it's a very clean presentation, but it's obvious to me how much detail and hard work and how many hours you put into it, and your diligence and dedication to the department, with regard to this recruiting, which is so important, is something that I really thank you for.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I've worked for the department for 16 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I believe in this department. My father worked for this department. I believe in it. I believe in this community, and I believe that we need to provide the best police department that we can to serve this community. And working with the men and women every day in the department, I know what needs to be done to help take care of them. And so as long as we can have that voice, and you guys are tremendously helping provide that avenue to get that voice to share those concerns and needs so that we can get it done. And I do see it, and I know that it will help with not only recruitment, but especially retaining officers, good quality officers.
I do want to echo those sentiments of, we really appreciate your time, your energy, your passion, your desire to do what's right for Glynn County as well as the Glynn County PD. So thank you, sir, for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Rinkovich, Mr. Walker, any other comments concerning this particular topic?
This is Mr. Chairman. We're approaching the creation of this panel. And I reviewed some of my notes the other day, and I noted that the first two missions that the commission gave us were to assess the implementation of the recommendations of the IACP study a couple of years ago, and secondly, to move forward, have the department move forward with the Georgia certification. We are spending a lot of time on individual issues that relate to both of these tasks, but I think it might be appropriate that at some point in the near future, we get an update as to where the department is in, number one, implementing the recommendations of the ICP panel, and two, where we stand with Georgia certification of the department.
Yes, sir. We heard your comments, and that's potentially something that we can add to our agenda for next meeting. I'll have those conversations with the chief to see if we are prepared to do just that, to give that update for our next meeting. But we'll pencil in that as an agenda item for our April meeting.
I recognize the stress that the department's under in terms of workload, recruitment, and every other issue that we've talked about. And I don't mean to suggest that it's something that has to be done immediately, but I do think it's our responsibility to follow up on those two issues with the department.
And I agree with you, and I think us doing it next meeting would be timely because we have been working diligently on several individual items that contribute toward the report as well as the Georgia certification, but it may be a good opportunity to group all that together to show the progress that has been made by the police department as a whole concerning those issues.
I'd just like to make a recommendation. I know we have talked about the possibility of expanding this panel, and I would appreciate a conversation maybe at the next meeting as to what that would look like, the type of individuals that may bring value to the panel, Mr. Chairman. So, and I don't know whether we have a discussion amongst ourselves or we.
I think we can have a discussion among ourselves and then make that recommendation to the commission about expanding the panel, because obviously our panel has dwindled down from its original point with Mr. Alexander at least not being a part of it. But we can have that discussion and then make our recommendation.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? So what looks like a good date for our meeting for the month of April? Dana, what do you have very similar to what we've been doing these past few months, which is on Wednesdays? How does the 14th look for everyone's schedule? Does that work? Okay. Then let's set it for the
Works for me.
14th, because I think it's ideal if we can have it before that work session. Because then we'll have to wait until potential work session in May to get something to them. Yes, ma'am. Everyone's 5:30 still good for everyone? All right. If there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
It's been properly motioned and second for adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Our panel stands adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you.